Pancham, welcome to the show, my friend. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, Brian, for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk with you and get and dive into what you're doing now. But before we get to that and all the awesome stuff you're doing and all the people that you're helping, you know, the audience wants to hear these W-2 prison break stories, and you definitely have one. And just give us kind of a little bit of background on you, what you were doing before, all the great things that you're doing now in investing and with your podcast, which we'll get into in a little bit. Just tell us, give us a little history, and then let's dive into the details of how you were able to break free of that.
Sure. Well, thank you, Brian, for that question. I came to the US. I was born and brought up in India, and I came to the US in 2003 to get my master's degree. And the idea at the time was that I'll come here, spend a couple of years working after my graduation, and then go back to India and start something of my own. That was the plan. So it worked out. I graduated in 2005 and, started working in New York City in the fintech industry. In 2009, me and my wife decided to sell everything, and we pretty much sold everything except we had one bed left. And we found out that we were expecting our first kid, and at that time we decided, what, it's very hard to move even houses, forget countries during this time. So why
Yeah.
not spend some, have our firstborn here and then we'll move back. And in 2011, as the history has it for us, that we decided to stay here. And that's when I actually started investing in this country. So I uh, read that purple book, which I'm sure many of your listeners might have read, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And after that, I read, which actually had more impact on me, was the Cash Flow Quadrant book. And that made a huge impact for me. It was basically, you have left side and the right side. Left side only earned 10% of the income, or control 10% of the wealth, and the right side controlled 90% of the wealth, but 90% of the people were on the left and 10% on the right. So it was kind of very clear for me that I wanted to be on the right. The path wasn't clear, but it was clear to me that I wanted to go there. And so I started investing here as part of my hobby, and started educating myself. I bought two rental properties before I bought my own home, and then slowly expanded my portfolio into five different states, which I was managing through property managers. I had small properties, single family homes, duplexes, triplexes. And then what happened was that at some point it became too much work. All the work used to happen during the daytime. I had my full-time job, and I was doing all these calls, taking all these calls during my lunchtime. And it was getting a lot, and I felt like, what, this is becoming another, it was very hard to manage with my full-time job. Let's put it that way. And all during this time, this hobby of mine became, for a lack of better word, addiction for me. I was studying, about real estate, listening to podcasts like yours here, and really learning about how to grow bigger faster. And I stumbled upon syndications, and that's when I realized that this is what I want to do. And it was 2017 when I actually decided that in 2 years I would quit my job, and I did quit in 2019. But it was really hard because I had my full time. My job was really high paying job, and I liked my job. There was nothing wrong with my job. It's just that I didn't see myself doing that for 50 years. I was taking train each way, 1.5 hours of commute each way, which is 3 hours total. And I was listening to these podcasts, and every single day I would ask this question to myself: do I want to do this at the age of 50? And the answer was no. So, and the next question was, why am I doing it now? So that was the thing. And eventually I did quit. It wasn't easy. I did hire a coach, and I have stories for that too. And I can get into that if you want me to. But that's where I was. And now, if someone asked me what would I do differently, I was really grateful for whatever happened and happened for good. But if something was to change, I would have quit sooner.
Yeah, we all would, right? So
Yeah.
that's a great. I love that story. I took a bunch of notes, so I might just go back a little bit. So talk about the first couple of rentals that you purchased. It sounds like they were near you, and then you did some out of state. How did you? You know, we all read. Most of us read the Purple Book that you mentioned, Rich Dad Poor Dad. We're going to leave a link in the show notes because if you haven't read that book, you got to read it. You just need to. And the other one too, Cash Flow Quadrant. That's a must read. I've read both, and you know, definitely will change the way you think about things, especially your job.
Yeah.
So what you know, there's always this gap between education versus the taking of the action part. Like, was that difficult for you to grab those first couple of rentals? I mean, talk about maybe that process a little bit, because that was really the start for you.
Yeah, no, that's so what happened was after I read this book, and it was always in the back of my mind that I want to, get into investing, and not knowing a lot, and especially I was not born and brought up here, so I had never seen anyone purchase a home ever in their life, and didn't even know what all it took to actually do that. And so I was just one day chatting with my neighbor, who became a really good friend of mine. I was renting an apartment, and he was living in the next door apartment, and we became really good friends. And I told him, you know what? And the same time, my rent on my apartment went up like $400, from like 2,500 to like 2,900 approximately. So I was like, you know what? The rent has gone up crazy. Why don't we, invest our money, even if we break even after all the numbers we do, like, we should just buy something. And that's what I did. Actually, we started looking for rental properties, and we went to open houses. And this is 2012, right? Like,
Hmm.
it was not hot real estate market that we know today. There were houses available everywhere, and the numbers used to work for every deal pretty much. It was just like, okay, which one you pick. And so we bought one house, and my friend decided to move into one unit and rent the other unit. So we jointly bought it. He stayed in one unit. He was paying rent for that, whatever we thought was a fair market value, and he needed a place anyway. And then we rented the other unit. So that was the first thing. And when we bought that, within 3 months of that, me and my wife, we bought our second rental. um, and we just sold actually both of them, because I'm moving to Florida from New York. And just so after 8 years, they both did, actually 10 years almost. So they both did really well for us. We wouldn't have sold them if we were not moving.
Nice. I love it. And then I would imagine that, well, how did you acquire those? Did you use bank debt? Was it an all cash? I mean, what was it? What was the scenario there?
It was bank debt.
Hmm.
So both of us had really good jobs. And it was our first home. It wasn't hard at all to get financing.
Yeah. So a good, you can, while you're in your W-2, you leveraged it to be able to get loans to buy rental properties. And eventually that was like the catalyst for you to be able to leave, which I'm going to ask you about next. So 2000, so then you got into syndications. For those of us who don't know what that is, can you give us kind of a high level explanation when you say syndications? What do you mean?
Yeah, sure. So syndication is a general term, and it can be used in a lot of different things. So basically, what that means is that you are syndicating a project. You are bringing together something to to you're pooling resources to do a project together. So in case of real estate, what we do is we pool capital together, and from the limited partners, and general partners pool their knowledge and expertise together to actually run a project. So basically, the resources are coming together, and most of the deals that you see they are getting done through syndications. All these bigger deals that you see, a big hotel or something around the corner where you live, is probably getting done through syndications. And I like to give an analogy of, plane ride, that, think of this as everyone wants to, let's say you're taking a flight to Florida and Orlando, and you're in the plane, and everyone in this plane they have one destination, which is Florida. And then you have the pilot of the plane who's flying the plane, and then you have passengers who are sitting. So passengers are the limited partners, and the pilot is the general partner, and they all have one destination, which is Orlando. And in case of multifamily or any other project, the success of the project. So that's what syndication is.
I love that explanation. That's a good analogy with the plane. So that's good. Okay. So you did all these rentals. I would assume a lot of them were single family, and then you made the leap to multifamily.
Correct.
So talk about maybe your first multifamily project that you got into, and was that a difficult jump from single family to multifamily, and how did you execute that?
Yeah, it was quite difficult for us. Like me, I actually found my partner at my full-time job, and because he was in real estate, I was in real estate, we were both doing it separately. And one day we started talking, and slowly we became partners, and we did some flips together, and eventually we came down to multifamily together, right? So our before we bought our very first building, which we actually closed, the we had looked at many deals. So I had these broker relations across these 5 different states, and I told every single one of them, you know what, we want to buy bigger buildings, like 10, 12, 15, 40 units. And they started sending us deals. So me and my partner, we would go out and look at all these over the weekend, to check out these properties, and we would put in offers. We would uh, we were not getting anywhere, because we are engineers by background, and we have this issue with analysis paralysis, or at least used to, right? And
Yeah.
we were very analytical. And at that time, like 2013, 14, 15, 16, if you really remember, the cap rates were 8 to 10%. And we were put in an offer, and let's say the deal is trading at 10 cap, and we would be like, you know what, this should be 11 cap, I think we are overpaying. So we would always be behind the market. That 10 became 9, 9 became 8, 8 became 7. With the benefit of hindsight, every single one of those deals, if you would have done them, would have been a slam dunk. But to answer your question now, that it was very hard for us to actually close anything. And we even went under contract on a couple of buildings which we didn't close because we found issues and whatever. Like, we
Mm.
always found a reason not to do a deal.
Yeah.
And then we realized that, what, we need to hire someone to help us out with our look over our shoulders, like, to see that if there's anything that we're doing wrong. And in 2017, there is this deal, 44 unit building in Charlotte, North Carolina, that we actually bought as our very first multifamily deal. And that one, also, there's an interesting story that actually, was listed for 1.75. And it wasn't listed, it was off market, but they were asking 1.75. Our first offer was 1.5, and they said 1.7, and we went back and we said 1.7. Okay, done deal, because we were like, you know what, we don't want to
Yeah.
do the same mistake. They came back with 2 million, and we're like, all right, sorry, we're not doing the deal, right? So this was January of 2017. And they had a good reasoning for it, because there were 4 units which were burnt down. And they were like, you know what, by the time you guys buy it, it will be all up and running, and you will have brand new units. And we said, okay, you know what, when you have that, let's talk then.
Mm.
So, and that's what happened. And eventually we ended up buying that for 2 million. And that was our first deal, and it wasn't easy, to be honest. Like, for us, capital raise wasn't the problem. For us, actually getting a deal which we felt was at a good price under contract was the problem.
Okay. which is interesting. I think a lot of people might think that the raise would be the more difficult part, but you find a good deal, the money comes, right?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we were fortunate in that respect. Our first raise was $781,000, and
Mm-hmm.
we we were fortunate because we had this, like, all this time, me and my partner separately, we were doing, and even together, some deals that we were uh, doing real estate, and all of our friends and colleagues knew what we were doing, right? They were actually coming to us to invest their capital, and we didn't want to take it at the time, without even doing all the, legwork, and doing it properly. So we, you know obviously it took some convincing when we actually had the deal, but they were kind of partially warm leads, let's put it that way.
Nice. So 2017, you buy this 44 unit in Charlotte. You also mentioned in the beginning of the episode that that was the year that you decided you were going to leave your job by
Yeah.
2019. So was this the deal that kind of made that happen for you?
No, that
No.
decision was made before that.
Hmm.
And it's just that, you know, when you decide and you're determined to do certain things, things fall in place, right? There's that saying. And, I've started believing in that so much that you you uh you just persevere and you follow what you want to do, and it will come, and if you stay the course.
I love it. So was this a, now I have to assume that this was not just a stated goal, that this was probably written out.
It was not only written out, it was actually spoken with our coach, and he had the notes too, from our very first call, and when it eventually happened. And it was great
Yeah.
because it was written down, it was planned for.
And you have someone holding you accountable, your coach, and then the power of writing it down. I mean, a lot of people just have goals floating around in their head. I want to have this much money in my bank account, or this many rentals, this many cars, but it's not written down. I mean, talk about the difference, or how important it is to have your goals in writing and well defined, not just stated. I want this, but maybe expand on that a little bit about what your goals look like.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I actually do a journaling practice every morning,
Mm-hmm.
where I write down, things that I'm grateful for, and, the goals, as well. And goals I don't do every day, but, I have this whiteboard, which you probably can't see. I have written here, um, goals, and it says RPM method, which is results, purpose, and massive action. So this is from Tony Robbins, where you define what results you're trying to get out. Okay, and then you define the purpose, why are you doing it, and then after you have that, you just take massive action, which is M, and you write down the steps, what they look like. So I'll give you an example. Actually, it's on my board. It's a little stale because I haven't changed that part. So I wanted to start a podcast. Not this is not I had a podcast, but I wanted to start some mindset series where I talk about 5 minutes about different things. And so that was the result. I wanted the result that I want to do this and really want to help people, and that was the purpose, really help people to get this mindset things out. And then I took massive action where I was like, writing it down every weekend on what I want to talk about, and now do the episode. So that's how I do my goals, where we have results. And an RPM method, like me and my partner, we sit down every year. This year we sat down in the beginning, and every quarter we revise, where what are we trying to achieve, how many buildings we are going to buy, and how many as what are we trying to sell, and all that stuff. Basically we talk about it, and actually write it down.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the detail too. The detail is super important. You take your goals and just keep going, right? And, script it out. That scripting is super important. Journaling is super important. I love the RPM method, result, purpose, massive action. I'm just going to repeat that again. You mentioned your podcast, Pancham, so let's just go right into that. Talk about the your podcast, the Gold Collar Investor, and let's dive in. You're almost up to about 200 episodes, I think now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, my 200th episode is gonna go out next month. So
Awesome.
yeah, my podcast is really about uh, teaching people about personal finance, and we talk about all things finance. It includes asset protection, life insurance, to investing in gold and silver, and in real estate. For most part, it's very heavy on real estate, different asset classes within real estate, because that's how that's the group I'm around, and they end up being taking more space, like a lot many episodes
Yeah.
as compared to, let's say, investing in gold and silver. uh, so my podcast is about that, and I talk to my avatar is people like me, people like who are earning really, making good salaries in their W-2 jobs, people in the big tech, working for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and fintech industry in New York. I talk to those people and really help them with uh, personal finance and diversifying outside of Wall Street.
Yeah. And I would have to imagine that because it was difficult for me, some of these folks that you work with in for these big tech companies that are making half a million or more per year, it's
Yeah.
probably very difficult for them to walk away from that. Even if they can get to a passive income standpoint where they just maybe they don't feel like they can ever replace that income. Is that am I tracking in the right direction there?
Absolutely, it is so true. And a lot of these people, they do like what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and they get rewarded handsomely. I was in the same boat, like I was making similar money, and it was very hard for me to quit. And my wife, my parents, everyone was against me quitting, actually. And I get that, right? Why that's the case, because you're making such a good salary. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is very hard unless you know your why is so strong, like that you would burn all the bridges you want to quit. If you want to quit, it's very hard to do, extremely hard.
Yeah. And what is your, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what your why is, and I assume that was the driving force behind you being able to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, my biggest why was that, like, the freedom of time, freedom of all these freedoms that everyone kind of talks about, like freedom of financial freedom, freedom of living from working from anywhere. I'm moving to Florida. That's a decision I made. I actually made a decision to move out of New York right after I quit my job in 2019. But then 2020 happened, which is the pandemic, in March of 2020. And there goes 2 years, and this is really the first year where we could really move freely. So we that's where so freedom of location, freedom of financial freedom, freedom of time, spending it the way you want. And then really, at the same time, I always wanted to do something on my own, because I really didn't see myself working in the corporate world. So those were my biggest why, which is really spending time with your family, and my kids a little, spending time with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's enough. My why is my family too. I was away from them for years and years and years, traveling in a corporate job. And, if you can get behind that, then because I think you would agree that, being involved in real estate or having your own business is not necessarily going to be easier than what you were doing because it's going to come with its own set of challenges, and you have to rely on that why when that does happen, and it will. We don't want to mislead anyone and think that you leave your job that everything's going to be perfect because it isn't. You're still going to have challenges, but if you can get behind that strong why, that'll always push you through and get you to and get you to the next day. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's absolutely question about that. And I totally understand. When I used to listen to all these motivational videos from Tony Robbins to different people, motivational speakers, they always talked about you need to know your why. And I finally, got that before I quit my job, that what that really meant. Walking away from a $500,000 job, it was not easy.
It definitely is scary and not easy to even. I mean, and really, this could be true for whatever your salary is, right? I mean, it's all relative. You're making fifty
Yeah.
thousand, or you're making, 500,000. It's frightening. So maybe either whether it's you or maybe some of the people that you help, your avatar, as you said, what are, like, other than money, what are some of their blocks that maybe you're able to help them overcome or point them in the right direction where, you know, because I always think it's just a few tweaks, right? We overcomplicate it. Like, if you just make a few changes in your life, you can get to where you want to go. You just have to take that massive action, as you said.
Yeah, see, for my avatar, I think the biggest issue is that a lot of these people have immigrated to US, and they're first generation here, and that, and we do have second generation people too. The issue I have with them is that who are not they just don't know things that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in Cash Flow Quadrant. Basically, not really knowing how to invest and thinking about, creating cash flow, creating multiple streams of income, right? People think that having a $500,000 job is amazing. Yes, it is, but at the end of the day, it's one paycheck, right? One source of income. Now, if that goes away, there goes everything. So it's actually more risky than anything you can imagine. So I guess the lack of financial education is one of the biggest block, and that's not really my avatar. That's pretty much uh, a general case. And
Mm.
then second for my avatar is that they are, you know engineers by background, and the same issue that we were having, which is analysis paralysis. Like, we analyze anything until they get paralyzed, in making any decision. So, which I get. I use this analogy, I forget where I got this from, that they wouldn't want to leave the house unless they have all the 10 signals green. They can see it from their house when they leave. You will never get those 10 signals green. There may be 5 of them green or 8, and you just have to take action and take it to the next step.
Yeah, that's great. You have to have a little bit of faith. You got to take a little bit of a leap there. So, and look, analysis paralysis. I was stuck in it for years, and I'm not an engineer, but I get the mindset. You just, well, this has to be absolutely perfect, and then if it is perfect, then maybe you still won't do it. So eventually, you have to, you know, take that step and dive in and figure it out. It's never ever ever going to be as bad as you make it out in your mind, because that's really what happens is we start projecting and telling these stories like, oh, this isn't going to work, this is going to go bad, what if I lose all my money, and then you end up not doing anything ever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you've got a book that let's talk about your new book, correct?
uh the ebook, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
we actually, after talking to so many people on the podcast and so many investors who are engineers, we actually put together the Engineer's Guide to Passive Investing. We talk about all the mindset related issues that we have touched on here and how to overcome in that. And, really the benefits that these guys have, especially because they're making good salary to create this financial freedom, and retire comfortably. So that's that guide. It's actually available for download to anyone. It's on mesoscapital.com, MESOS capital.com/download. And that's where they can go out and get this guide. We just put this out, hope people like this. And yeah, so that's that.
misoscapital.com/download, and it's the ingenious guide to passive investing, correct?
Right. Yes. Mises Capital is our investing company, which we, use.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to checking that one out for sure. So, Pancham, if you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but and you in your intro about advice, like you would have started sooner. But for someone who is thinking of leaving their job or trying to, like they're just getting started, right? They know they're you, right? They're riding on the train 3 hours each day, which is crazy, but that's how New York is, right? The commutes are nuts. But you use that time wisely. I was going to commend you on that. Is a lot of you probably see a lot of people, watching Netflix or not doing anything or whatever, social media. You use that time to educate yourself. What advice would you give to someone in that similar scenario that doesn't want to be doing this when they're 50, as you say? Like, what would be the starting point for them? Because I think that's a struggle for a lot of people. Like, what do I do first?
Right. So I think the answer might be repeating few things, but here's the thing, right? If someone is trying to quit or thinking of quitting, and basically I'm assuming they don't like what they're doing, or they want to be out of out of the job or whatever that is, that and they want to start something on their own or become live the life of their dreams. In order to achieve that, right, they have to really be clear on what they actually want, right? Their wants, needs, and desires, right? And in order to achieve those, in order to be clear on what you really want, you have to have this mental, you have to sit down and really think about, without any, layers of doubt, fears, uncertainties, and that's where sometimes coaches help out. um, because as soon as I or anyone I talk to, I know I was in job, a lot of people wanted to quit and it still are there and they want to quit, but they haven't done anything. The reason is that the fear, uncertainty, have that clarity, and that comes with really, for me, it came through meditation. It was not easy. I was very clear. My vibe became really strong, and that's first step. And the second step is, once you've done the first step, then whatever that looks like, maybe you want to start your own bakery, maybe you want to start your own, hair salon, whatever that looks like, right? Then you need to start uh, educating yourself towards that. I actually interviewed one guy, actually two or three different people who actually help people in getting franchises out, right? Like get into franchising business, and
Mm.
they he said a line which actually stuck with me. He was like, franchising is like dating, where you're trying to see if business is for you or not, right?
Mm.
And you do minimal investment, or some investment, but everything is laid out for you. Your systems are laid out for you. You know exactly what to do because someone actually did that for you. Yeah, you shared some part of the profits with the company that you're franchising for, but then you get everything on your plate and then you start your own business, right? It may feel like a job, but then he has one guy, which I forget the story, but the ex-marine guy who started with one hair salon and eventually had 20 and making $1 million just from that, and he doesn't even go to any one of them at this point, right?
Mm.
So whatever that looks like, the first point, whatever you want to do, then start educating yourself towards that, and then that will lead you to that will throw breadcrumbs. Like we said, you have to then have some faith and just march towards that.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. So get clear on what you want. I mean, I think there's most of the world is probably not clear on what they want to do. They're just going through the motions. And then something you mentioned that's super important is getting a coach, hiring a mentor. I went through the majority of my adult life after college without having a coach or a mentor of any kind. And it was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, and why I was in a corporate sales for 25 years and not chasing my dreams was because I thought I could do it all on my own. And it wasn't until I hired a coach that I was able to make some massive changes in my life.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing to your point. So I have spent more on coaches as of now, which I spent probably, or my parents spent probably from starting from when I was born to the all through my graduation from master's degree, all combined together, including my living expenses. For all of this time, I spent more than that already on coaches that, which I did. And I think that money has been, that coaching and that money, I think of it as an investment rather than as an expense, and has paid, you know, uh, without knowing. Yeah, I haven't done the numbers, but it's probably much more than 10-20x at this point.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've spent a ton of money on coaching as well, and I'm in the same boat as you in terms of the return. It is an investment in yourself, and that's the way you have to treat it. We're very quick to go out and buy, spend 40, 50, $60,000 on a car, but we won't invest $5,000 in ourselves, right? So it really is a mindset shift, and it all starts with you. You have to invest in yourself first, and then let the investments buy all those nice things if that's truly what you want. That's a great share, Pancham. I appreciate it. Before we wrap up, I just want to I want to ask you about it because I know you like to read. You're big on books. Is there any books that you're reading right now that you want to share to the audience?
Yeah, I'm reading right now Atomic Habits by
Mm-hmm.
James Clear. It's yeah, it's a great book. I'm still haven't I haven't implemented anything but you yet, but I think I'm trying to change certain habits, and I think I'll use that to change my habits.
Yeah, it's a great book. I've read that one as well. Anywhere besides the passive investing book, anywhere where you want folks to go, and your podcast, which is that give the link for the podcast if you could.
Yeah, the podcast is The Gold Collar Investor. The name came from, how you have blue collar, white collar jobs. These jobs are like gold collar. I call them gold collar jobs. And, that's where the name came from, Gold Collar Investor. Um, so yeah, that's the podcast. If you want to go there, thegoldcollarinvestor.com. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere you can just find me.
All right, excellent. Okay, before we go, any final thoughts? Anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share today? You've given some great nuggets here.
No, I think my final thoughts are the same, that, listen, you've been a great host, and you coach as well, Brian, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So, coaching is something that has changed my life. And I hope, people who are on the fence, take a leap of faith. Definitely, uh, if you're stuck somewhere, if you're, have a mental block, give coaching a shot.
Awesome. I love it. And yeah, sometimes it's just a little mental block and you get over that and the world can open up for you. Pancham, I really, really appreciate you spending the time with us today and sharing your awesome story. I mean, it's inspiring for sure. You gave up a lot to get to where you are, but I know it's definitely worth it. I look forward to having you on again someday. And everyone, make it a great day.